Now. It's all now, isn't it? When Eckhart Tolle wrote The Power of Now, he wrote that from a place of deep inner standing, because for many years prior to his awakening, he was in a very deep depression, to the point whereby he was seriously considering taking his life. And then out of the blue, one day, he just woke up and the depression had lifted. And it shocked him into being present. And of course it inspired him then to go on to write all of these self-help, psychological, insightful books. But how many of you, even having read that book, really comprehend what being in the now is? And I would suggest to you that unless you have been very, very seriously compromised in your life with some level of major catastrophe, bout of depression, deep bouts of anxiety, those sort of things, whereby you'd contemplated taking your life, you had reached a very dark place. So you knew that dark place. You know it is there. It's waiting. Many people are experiencing it right now. It is just another dimension of consciousness. Like being ecstatically high, joyous, and feeling very content and free. It's also a very different state of consciousness. Being present in the now. You're in the mean. You're not ecstatic and you're not depressed. You are exceedingly awake and alert, and you absorb everything. You notice a great deal, and you see the world in a very, very different way. And this is something that the world is lacking because of our busy lives, because of the massive influx and stream of data that we are receiving on a daily basis. It prevents us from being in the now. It prevents us from just stopping, being still, emptying the mind. Close your eyes in the meditation, or just look at the world. How many of you ever just go into a city or a town and sit in a public place and just observe? Not thinking about anything. You've got no design, no intention, no desire. You're just looking, observing at the world going on about you. And you look at the people milling all around. You look at their attire. You look at what they're doing. You look at how they present themselves. You observe their faces. And if you're sitting in close proximity to people, you can hear what they're speaking about. And you can see that they are so far flung from remotely being present. And if you ever sat down and looked around, let's say during the course of a few hours in a city, you'd see 1,000 people, no problem. Some may be sitting down, many will be walking around. See if you see a knowing glance or stare from their eyes. See if you can look over and see somebody sitting in a doorway, sitting on a bench, leaning against a railing or something, just looking up at the sky, looking up at the birds, looking up at the buildings, watching as people mill by like a fly on the wall. I've never actually saw one of those people. I've stood in Victoria Station in London, I've stood in Central Station in New York, and I've stood in lots of other prominent places like that. And I've just looked around to see if I could see a sparkle, a twinkle of knowing in another person's eye that thinks and says to me in their glance, I know what you're doing. They don't do it. They're never present enough to recognise. I've stood in these mega stations, absolutely in the middle of Victoria Station, Central Station. I've been like a lamppost between all of the stations and the portals and all that sort of thing, and 360 degrees all around me. There's been people coming this way, coming that way, coming that way, going this way, going that way, and I've just looked. I've tried to look into the eyes of anyone that took a glance at me or looked at me and thought, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Are you lost? Never. Not a single person. These days, people don't want to engage. They don't want to stop and inquire. A penny for your thoughts, sir. They don't want to do that. I wonder how windy this is proving to be. Well, it is what it is. A penny for your thoughts. Whoever says that these days, whoever has that level of inquiring mind that seriously wants to know what another person is really thinking. It doesn't happen, does it? Let's try it over here. It just doesn't happen. I don't remember, save maybe when I was much younger, in a relationship with the mother of my daughter, and maybe she'd catch me just staring into emptiness, and she'd say, where are you? And I'd go, wow, I was just here and I was just there. And I'd tell her where in the world I was, or in what situation, or engaged in what conversation in my mind's eye. We were very close, and so it was that closeness. She sincerely wanted to know where I was, and she wanted to be involved and engaged. Nobody cares anymore. How many of you, partners, you lay in bed of an evening time and you go, just before you're dropping off, what are you thinking about? How many of you would be honest enough to reveal what you're thinking about? That's, of course, assuming that you think, because we know these days that many people don't think. They don't have internal monologue or dialogue. They can't be having a monologue to themselves. They can't be engaged in a dialogue. what am I going to do tomorrow? Should I do this? Well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should do this, and all different sorts of things. We know that people are very, very different now. And one of the most disconcerting things, as far as I can tell, is that if people don't have an internal monologue, then I don't know how they have their own thoughts. If people don't have an internal dialogue, I don't know how they would ever reason with themselves. If you couldn't reason things through, you'd be beholden to listening to debates, wouldn't you? Oh, what do these people think? Oh, what do those people think? Oh, yeah, I think that, or oh, I think a little bit of that. Oh, I'm confused now. And then you leave the debate and you've got a few things in your memory, and maybe you'll settle for those. You'll take ownership of somebody else's thoughts because you never actually had your own. How many of you listen to a debate with your open minds? How many of you listen to a debate with your biases, and you just want your biases confirming? And when the person that is not saying what you want to hear says something, you know, like the politics today, it's ridiculous, isn't it? How many people could just listen to both parties and go, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to form my own party, and I'm going to have a little bit of what you are projecting, I'm going to have a little bit of what you're projecting, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of ideas of my own. And I'm going to call it the Independent Thinking Party, for independent thinkers. For any of those out there who actually are independent thinkers, can think of things themselves, can have ideas themselves about how the world should be, or how politics should conduct itself, and contemplate varying realities and the ramifications of those realities. You see, this is what intelligent thinking people do, don't they? You know, yeah, pondering over, you know, this sort of thing. You know, one of the Greeks, in deep in contemplation. How many of you ever get in deep contemplation? How many of you can follow through a lineage of thought? If you're problem solving, you go, right, well, there's an issue here. How am I going to solve that? Right then. I could come at it from this way, I could come at it from that way. I could engage this other person, or I could do a whole bunch of things. You strategize, don't you? You think through a whole different array of scenarios, discounting the ones that are not so great as you go along, until finally you've got one you think, that sounds pretty watertight, I'll have a go at that. But I'm also going to have plan B, just in case this happens and that happens, which of course is entirely possible. So, when we look at the varying possibilities that our lives could be, or the world could be according to our perception, is vast. And when you become awoken, then you will be an independent thinker, and you'll have your own ideas, and you'll look across the board and you'll realize what a shocking shower of shit it is. And when you listen to people who are in positions of power and deemed to be intelligent, you will see that they're not intelligent at all. And you ask the question, how did they get into that position? And then when you learn about the ramifications of machinations of people in power and politics and all that, you go, well, they are just figureheads being pushed to the top because they can articulate. and maybe they have a little bit of charisma. So they're chosen for the job, and they are fed whatever it is that they're supposed to say. When you have an independent thinker and a great orator, let's say like JFK, then for the powers that be, you've got a very dangerous person. And I was listening to Robert Kennedy last night on a Russell Brand video. He went to the RNC, Republican National Convention, something like that, and he was speaking, and JFK was speaking. And JFK is a very bright person, a Kennedy, of course. Sorry, not JFK, Robert Jr. And very intelligent, and his politics are very correct. He has got on the breast of the machinations of the globalists. He knows what they're all about, and he's very ferocious and determined in what he does, and he's made lots of gains in his personal and political life. But what lets him down is that he isn't an orator, because he has some sort of an issue with his throat.
He's talking like this, and it all sounds like such a struggle.
People are like, what? He's not like his uncle, you know, John F. Kennedy, who's a superb orator, could string sentences together forever. By the way, whilst I'm speaking about orators, if you're interested, then you can say so in the comments, and I can send you a link to a channel which has Hitler's speeches translated via AI, and you can listen what the man actually said, what the man actually was speaking about. And when you do that, you will know that he was a very, very intelligent articulator. He knew exactly what was going on in the world. He knew exactly who was doing it, and he had very good ideas of how he was going to prevent that from happening. And what I can tell you now is, people, that the exact same people doing the exact same things way back in the 30s and the 40s have been done ever since by the same people in the same way. Only these days people aren't allowed to speak about it. They aren't allowed to have platforms such as David Icke's, such as Alex Jones's, which lay it all on the table. And even David Icke now, these days, he is banned from every single country in Europe. He cannot get a venue anywhere, because what he says is too close to the bone. But in the early days, he was speaking about the spiritual facet amalgamated with the so-called corporeal facet. You know, the archons and the lizards and all this different sort of stuff. He did a lot of research, travelled a lot of places around the world, and, you know, gathered up all the folklore and, you know, all the spiritual history of what was going on in certain cultures. And, you know, much the same as the book I'm reading now, Isis Unveiled, with Madame Blavatsky, looking into many, many varying facets of the supernatural. But it's coming back slowly. It was seriously debunked 150 years ago. And we're slowly coming around now. Even our modern scientists and intellectuals, they're slowly coming around and feeling more confident that they can say it, that this is a spiritual dimension, and there are spirits, and we are a spirit, and there is no reality here, there is no corporality, for God's sake, you know. But you see, people, they don't have any awareness of that. They don't know what that means. They just go, of course this is real, because they haven't been into the unreal. But for those who have been into the unreal, then we know what the alternative is. We know what the spirit world is. We've encountered spirits and we've seen a thing or two. And so then when we read about it, and we read about near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences and all different sorts of supernatural and paranormal, this, that and the other, you can go, yeah, I get it, trust me, I get it. But for those who haven't had it, they're fast asleep. And so you can labour about the spiritual world forever. They'll never get it. Eckhart Tolle can labour about the power of being present forever. They will never get it. He gets thousands of people sitting before him, and I would think there's a very small percentage that really know where he's coming from, because to really know people, you have to have been shaken to your core, shaken outside of your ego. Your ego had to have been obliterated, because until that happens, your ego will be hanging on, clinging on, maintaining its autonomy of the fiction, because it is the perpetrator and creator of the fiction. And without the ego, then you're in the nothingness. Now, in my book I speak about many things, because I'm speaking to you in such a way about certain things that I give you instantiations of how I know these things to be so. And I never wrote this in the book, but here's an occasion, a revelation that I just thought it was revealed to me about 20 minutes ago as I'm doing some washing up in the kitchen. This revelation was, do you remember this time when there was a certain somebody in your life which was causing you a good deal of agitation, and the ego was very out of sorts and very affronted and had much to do about how it felt on the receiving end of certain machinations from this particular person? When I then went and smoked some cannabis, I hadn't smoked in 20 years. Some of you will remember I made a video, first time smoking cannabis in 20 years. So I smoked this joint in my emerald heaven, and I exited the ego. The ego was just a mess. It was strong gear. The ego was a mess. I could barely stand up. For half an hour I was comatose, lying down in the bracken, just heavy breathing and, like, you know, visions and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, what the fuck? Oh, for fuck's sake. And so, being the soldier that I am, I don't like to do that shit. I'm not the sort to do DMT or mushrooms or anything lying down with closed eyes. It's not my bag. I want open eyes in the world. And so anyway, I grappled up to my feet, and I'm walking through this bracken, and I'm tripping and I'm falling over, and then I had a memory of a certain person's actions which I found abhorrent. But in the state that I was in, where there was no ego, I never felt that pain. I never felt that agitation. I never felt anything. The body viscerally never felt the ramifications of the ego's discernment. When the ego discerns something, that person's a bastard. She's a bitch. We feel it, people. in the vicery, and you carry it and you're agitated, and if someone bumps into you, it's like because you've got all this agitation going on in the body. That's why we just have to expel all that stuff. We have to sack the ego. We have to get outside of the ego, so we no longer get traumatized by the internal dialogue and our biases and perceptions and all that different sort of thing. So this scenario was played to me by this what this person had done under normal circumstances with the ego had a big problem with it, because it just didn't fit with how I was. There's no way we were ever going to come together like this. There's no way there was ever going to be confidence or confluence, trust, peace, love. There was never going to be any of those things, because the ego felt so strongly about certain actions. But when I thought about those actions, when the ego had been set aside, because like it was absolutely comatose from the effects of the weed, then all I saw were the actions of a human being having a life experience with no judgment at all. There were zero ramifications of the action, and it was a soul experiencing a human existence with all of the beauty and all of the wonder. And from my mind sprung then a little bit of dialogue from Christ, and it was, "Truly I say unto you that you have to become like little children if you are going to enter into the kingdom of God." So a little child would hold no judgment, because their ego isn't formed and they don't have any biases. Let's just say a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, something like this. They're open, they're innocent, and they're just like sponges absorbing all whatever the world has to offer. But slowly we start to build the ego and our biases and our fears and our objections and all these different sorts of things, and of course they cloud our vision. And so when we go through the world, then we are judging every single thing and being that we come upon, and we're projecting onto them all of our pain, all of our suffering, all of our fears, all of our hates, all of the times we've been embarrassed or demeaned or let down. We're projecting them onto somebody that looks a little bit like somebody that may have been responsible for giving us the opportunity to feel like that. I can't ever say that a person makes you feel in a certain way. No, that person would present a certain energy, and what you do with that energy is down to you as a particular individual, because this person could do the same exact thing to 100 people and you get 100 varying responses from it. And so what psychedelics do for you people, they obliterate your ego, and they allow you then to be absolutely present. They allow you to see the world, to see the human being in a way which isn't clouded by judgment. So when Jesus states, "Thou shalt not judge, judge ye not, lest ye be judged," well, if we look long and hard into what that means, it means when we do judge, we feel the ramifications of that judgment. And if we are judging somebody and they don't know that we are judging them, they don't feel a single thing. They can be absolutely free from the ramifications of the judgment. But we the people holding the judgment, creating the judgment, are creating that negative energy within our heart and viscery. And we're feeling it, and it's bringing us down. And so when we look at people who are bitter and twisted because the world hasn't served them in a way in which they wanted it to, because they've never let go, they just haven't let go of everything. Because if you let go of everything, then there's no expectations, there's no attachment to anybody or anything, there's no expectations, nobody owes you nothing. And so it is what it is, and you make of it what you will, and it's just life, and it's just happening, and you're present and you're in the now. What of it? And if you are present and if you are in the now, and you are not carrying any biases, you are not harbouring any judgment, your ego isn't so pronounced that it is clouding your world to such a degree that it's so remarkable, people, when we have ego dissolution, when you look at the world without the ego, how remarkably different it is, how emancipating, how beautiful the world is. Now, when we take DMT, DMT flushes our brains full of neurotransmitters like dopamine. And the molecule of DMT is almost exactly the same as dopamine. So you get a massive flush, so you feel ecstatic. And anything that ever bothered you about anything, ever in your life, isn't of any consequence. Because it's so far at the back of your mind, your consciousness, that your cerebral cortex is absolutely flushed full of positive neurotransmitters. And you know, in that state, the world is perfect. It is only when the receding facet of your consciousness begins then slowly to come to the forefront and inhabit the cerebral cortex. That's then when you become filled once again with all of the negative energies of judgment and biases and all your pet hates and all that sort of thing. So what I'm saying here in this video, people, if you haven't experienced certain things, then your consciousness wouldn't have been open. And if that's the case, then there are ways to open up your consciousness. And lots of you that have watched my videos for a long time, you'll know what those ways are. And when you do that, then you enter into a different world. You will know what the power of now is, because your ego would have been completely wiped away, and so the only thing remaining is your consciousness, which is looking at the world, your untainted perception. And colours are brighter, the details are vastly more intense, your intuition is 100-fold, and it literally is like being born again. And so there's lots of truth in these metaphors, people. We can be born again. We can experience the world anew. We can see the world in a vastly more beautiful way. We can live in a more beautiful way. Since my awakening 15 years ago now, I haven't worked, and I have every hour of every given day at my disposal. Have you any idea what that means? For those of you that have never had that, and when you have holidays where you can't afford to go actually on a holiday, and so you hang around the house, and by the time it comes to the third day, you're getting a little bit bored. You've done all the hoovering, you've done all the dusting and the spring cleaning, you've seen a couple of friends, and you've fixed a couple of bits on the car, maybe you've done a bit of gardening. It's kind of like, I fucking need to go back to work now, I'm bored. What am I going to do? You've done all your stuff, you've kept yourself all busy, and you don't know what it's like to be in the now. Because you're terrified of that, because it's It's such a lonely place. It's such a boring place. It's such a place of nothing as far as you're concerned. But when your consciousness is opened up to the power of now, then you can spend all day, every day in it. And you can sit for hours, like I do, on benches like this, just looking, just living, appreciating, feeling. Every day is different. Every hour is different. The wind blows at different intensities and different temperatures. And the sounds of the rustling are different. The cloud configurations are different. Sometimes the sun will come out, sometimes the sun will beam down, and then you'll feel in another way. And then you can walk barefoot on the tarmac and experience that, and then walk barefoot on the grass and experience that, and all these different sorts of things. For people that just don't do these sort of things, you only experience what your feet are like in socks and shoes, or on carpet in your house. You know, there's a whole broad array of experience that your feet can have that we don't have these days. And so I made lots of videos in relation to this when I was down in the Algarve, because walking on the beaches at different times of day and different heights of tide give a whole array of different experiences, and very, very pleasant, every single one of them in their difference. From the most fluffy and hot sand to a chill, very flat, hard sand, to a sand whereby the wave has cast over it once and then quickly receded to leave a thin crust of dried sand grains on the surface of the fluffy sand, and when you walk through it, you crunch through the top surface of crustacean into the softness of the sand beneath, and it feels amazing. And then when you exercise your toes in all the different varieties of sands, it's a whole new experience. Now, with our hands, we know what it's like to feel a great number of things, but the feet are very, very deprived, aren't they? And yet they have the same sensibility. And of course, when people are born without any arms, they learn to use their feet in very, very dexterous ways, whereby they can do almost everything with their feet that they would do with their hands. You know, they can paint and play dominoes and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So, this video, what's it been about? It's been about a general awareness. Awareness of our state of consciousness. And the video that I made prior to this, when I came out, it had 17 hits and 1 thumb up, no comments. And I'm like, well, I think that had a lot to do with the time of day. Because if that was about 4:30, I put that video up, people are still working. Maybe they're finished work, maybe they're driving home in the car, maybe they're picking the kids up, they're doing a lot of things. They've got their earbuds in, maybe they're listening to it like that. They don't have time to thumb up or put a comment down. And so there's many reasons why videos will seem not to have such a response, because much of it is about timing. If I release my videos every day at say like 7:30 p.m, when the vast majority of people have finally settled down, having, you know, done the cooking and the food and took a shower, and they sit down in front of the computer and they're going to watch something. Well, oh, there's an Awake and Brave video. Well, I probably will, to the best of, you know, anyone's ability, would have your undivided attention, and you could listen to the video intently and you could get the message, and you go, yeah, I like that video, thumb that video up. Actually, made me think. You made me think, Aaron, and put a little bit of something down, you see? So this video, in contrast, will probably get more of a response than the one earlier. So let's just see what happens. Let's just have a look to see how many thumbs up and how many comments. And maybe if you've watched both the videos, maybe you can draw a discernment between the two and say which one you thought was the best. Maybe with the first video you'll say, yeah, you've spoken a lot about this before, you know, it's all Maya and this, that and the other, and it's kind of like a bit boring now. But what I'm asking you people is, do you really get it? Do you really get it? Do you know what it is? Do you really know what the concept of Maya is? Maya means illusion, in that illusion means it isn't what you think it is. It doesn't mean there's nothing here. It means that what is here isn't what you think it is. And that's the whole concept of Maya. And that's what scientists are speaking about today. Neuroscientists, they are now actually conveying, hey guys, by the way, what you see, what you hear, what you feel isn't anything like what's really here. Just say it. Just saying. You know, you've probably been looking at something you've considered blue all your lives, but under close scrutiny, it will probably turn out that, you know, you were wrong in that colour. Because we all see colours differently, we all see things differently, we all interpret the world differently. And for instance, you know, if we know one person, then 10 people will say, oh, this person's such, such, such and such. Everyone will be different. Some people may be similar, some people may be very, very varied. You ask how that is possible. Is that person really all those things? Or is that person none of those things? That person is none of those things. If there was no person judging, then that person would be none of those things. It's only when one person starts to judge and label and project that they, in your mind, become some of those things. And then when there's a group of people projecting onto this person, they become more of those things. Some of you will agree with some of the things and disagree with others. You see, so is this person really anything? No, nothing at all. Nothing is nothing, people. Until you project onto it, until you label it, until you convey a conveyance which has been conveyed to you through myriad of people throughout the years. And for instance, when I was speaking to the patient on one occasion, my younger brother, I used to psychoanalyse him, and I asked him what he thought about Donald Trump, and this was before the first inauguration. And he went, he's a buffoon. And I went, well, what are you on about? He's a buffoon. He's a buffoon. And I'm like, and at that particular time, the liberalists, of course, they were calling him a buffoon. This buffoon thinks he could be the president of the... And my brother, the idiot, he listened to this, and that's the only opinion he had of this man. He knew nothing about this man, other than what somebody said, he was a buffoon. You see how it works, people? So did this idiot know anything? No, nothing at all. Nothing about nothing. And so, you know, all I'm saying is just to have a few moments of introspection and ask yourself, do you really know anything? And then just say to your friends and family, you know, ask them about their internal monologue, ask them about their dialogue, ask them, do they see pictures when they close their eyes? I was speaking to somebody I have a chat with in the gym only a couple of days ago, and I was speaking to him about this stuff, and he's like, oh, you don't know anything about it, you know, just, I'm like, where the fuck you been all your life? But anyway, and I said to him, some people don't have a monologue or dialogue, and they don't see any colour. I say, do you have a monologue? Oh, well, I suppose so. What do you mean you suppose so? Do you or don't you? Do you have voices in your head? Oh, well, I mean, I guess so. Oh, you guess so? They've never thought about it. And so I said to him, I said, look, did you see colour, visions, or monochrome visions, whatever? Do you see anything when you close your eyes and you think about something? And he went, yeah, I think so. I said, I didn't want to say, look, fucking hell, cunt, Just close your eyes and verify it for once in your fucking life. It's easy. You're standing before me now. Just close your eyes. Think of a fucking banana. Can you see it or fucking not? He couldn't even close his eyes to put it to the test. Oh, well, he didn't fucking know, and he wouldn't know to this day. That cunt will never know. He will never fucking know. Because he will never have any awareness. Because he will never stop to think about, hey, I've got things going on inside my mind. Is it the same with everybody, by any chance? And that's what 99+% of the world are all doing. They don't know how their minds work. They don't know how anybody else's minds work. And so all they do is project onto everybody what their mind is saying to them, if indeed it is in actual fact saying anything. They're projecting it onto every fucker. And so when a politician is standing on the pulpit and he's banging on about all the shit that he's gonna do, then from in here it's just an absorption or a rejection or a projection for the average Joe. But a thinking person will look at his gait, will look at his mannerisms, will listen very, very carefully to what he's saying and ask ourselves, is he actually saying anything? Is he just propagandizing people? Is he just using buzzwords and keywords and things that, you know, that are going to be on the tabloids and, you know, for instance, change, yes we can. You know, did anybody know anything about the policies that Obama was going to implement? Or, you know, if he said, what do you think about Obama? Oh, yes, he's going to bring about change. And then if you say to him, well, what sort of change? Now you've got me. Well, did you not listen to any of his fucking policies that he's going to inaugurate or anything like that? Well, no, I mean, I just stared at the screen and it kind of all... politics, you know, I can't get me around politics, to be fair. Yeah, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know. And so I'm asking you, because I'm expecting that some of you are a little bit learned in these things. And if you are, then you might want to put a few lines down and, you know, do a bit of self-assessment. Do you have a dialogue? Do you have a monologue? Do you see visions? Or how often is it that you have proved yourself to be wrong? Have you ever proved yourself to be wrong? Do you ever question your own sensibility? Do you ever stop and ask yourself, do I really know that? Or am I just assuming that I know that? It could be about a whole bunch of things. For instance, here's the thing. Those of you that are living in houses, or ground floor apartments, I suppose, get a piece of paper and a pencil, and draw what the front of your house looks like. And I will absolutely guarantee that there won't be a single one of you that will get it right. You'll be so far out that you'll do a different door completely, you'll put windows on the other side of the house, you'll do all different sorts of shit. Don't be looking, you know, out the window, or oh, there's the door, there's the window. No, just just do it for yourself, people. Don't lie to yourself. Just, you know, look down at the paper and try to envision in your mind's eye where you live. See if you can do it. And then if you feel confident about that, then go to the neighbours' houses and go to the next ones and the next ones, and then do prominent things in the streets. Where are the lampposts? Where are the road signs? Where are the level crossings? Where are the rose beds? Where are the privet hedges? And all these sort of things. And I think you'll find that you have never ever paid any attention to them. And so I would ask, what sort of world are you living in? You're living in a fantasy world of your own creation, aren't you? You do not actually know where you are living. You think you are in a real world, but you cannot describe the so-called real world around you in any fucking details. And like I say, I guarantee that you'll get it vastly wrong. Because you've never paid attention. You've never walked down the street being observant of Mrs. Jones's flower beds and Mrs. Smith's rusty old pram that's lying in the grass on her lawn and all the rest of these things. And then one day you'll go, hang on, something different about Mrs. Smith's garden. Here's the pram. The old pram's gone. Oh, I thought I heard the rag and bone men coming round the other day. They must have had it. Oh, simple case of deduction, dear Watson. Oh, anyway, I can't see how long this has been. No timer on it, but it's been long enough. And, you know, there's a lot to think about, people. But I'm always going on about we live in the Maya, you're under delusion, it's an illusion. And you'll go, oh yeah, oh this seems real to me, oh the tax man's real, my job's real. None of it's real. None of it is real. It's only as real as you imagine it to be, people. You know, all of the things in your life, do you think they are real to everybody else? Of course they're not. They appear real to you, but let me tell you this. If you stop going to your job, then all of a sudden your job is just going to be a distant memory. You know, within a few weeks or months, you won't even feel like you ever worked there at all. And your memory's going to be fading. It's kind of like, fucking hell, I can't even picture really where I was doing this, that and the other, and all these different sorts of things. And so what I'm saying, people, look, if you're doing all these things and you think they're all important and you think they're all very, very real, well, one day every single thing's going to be gone. And like my life now, I had all the trinkets and properties and, you know, much of what anybody could really want in modern society. And I thought they're all pretty real to me, and I felt the realness of them. I carried the realness of them every single day. I carried the insecurity of all my chattels. You know, are we going to go into another financial crash? Is my property going to be worth fuck all? Is someone going to steal my car? You know, any number of things. Am I going to not be able to continue this vocation and not get this money and all these different sort of things? Well, all that stuff that I thought was very real at the time, I look back and I go, how real was it? It was just all delusion. It was all a figment of my imagination and all a projection of my fantasy. And the only thing that really made any of it real was the suffering that I felt with it, to be fair. I mean, driving a big car, yeah, it's all right. It's kind of great, but you very quickly take it for granted. Then when your wheel goes down a pothole and then the mag alloy, which costs 250 quid, is cracked, and then the tyre, which is another 200 quid, so you got 450 quid. And then one of the bolts is sheared off, which actually fixes the wheel to the hub, and that's another 150 quid. And, you know, it's going to take you, you know, a week or 10 days to get it fixed, and you've got to get it towed, and all this sort of stuff. Well, all that pain, all that stress, all that suffering, all that worry, just so I could be, oh, I'm driving and poof, and it's all over in a second. And now it's all gone. It's all just a distant memory. And what do I have remaining from it? The memories. Just the memories. I remember the nice shiny Jaguar I had with white ivory interior leather. I remember how much money I lost on it. I bought it for $22,000 and only a year later I sold it for $10,000. And it cost me a fortune why I had it, because it was always being damaged by the African roads. It's just a pain in my ass from the beginning to the end. What happy memories do I have of that? None. Why did I do it? Here you go. Because I could. Wanted to spend big money, get a big car. People think I'm a big man. Drive around, big car, big man. No, meant nothing. Meant nothing, people. So what I'm saying is now, all of you now that have got nice cars, nice houses, what does it mean? What does it mean? What will it mean to you in 30, 40 years' time when you're on your deathbed and someone says to you, so, Dad, Mum, what did you make of this life? You go, well, it was fucking one stress and strain after the other pet, to be fair. Never really had much of a quality life.
never really went, you know, and enjoyed myself too much. Always too busy, always too stressed, always chasing this, always chasing that. Yeah. But my life in the last 15 years, none of that. Absolutely none of that. Living present in the now every single day. Can you imagine how wealthy that makes me feel? I don't own anything. Like I say, a couple of guitars, laptop, camcorder, a few bits people. And how do I feel now? I feel wonderful, absolutely emancipated. I'm not worried about the tax on the car, the MOT on the car, the peeling paint on the window frames, the roof leaking, the kitchen that needs replacing, the old bathroom suite that's just an eyesore. I'm not worried about any of that, nothing at all. And so, can you imagine how free you can be? And if you are free, if you are completely emancipated and you don't have a single care in the world about losing anything, then try to imagine what that would feel like, as opposed to how you're feeling now. You see, if you have never thought about it, people, because you're too terrified about being in this situation where you don't have anything. Oh, what am I going to do? Oh, my nest egg, oh, my pension, my security. There is no security. You could get run over tomorrow. You could get stricken with, you know, impending doom anytime. And yet you think you've got something. You think you're working towards something. You think you're going to be happy when you've got this, when you've bought this house, when you bought the bigger house, and you've got a bigger car. But what are you doing all the time? You're taking yourself away from your life. You're taking yourself out of the present moment, which is life, living, absorbing, being. This is being. All the rest of the shit, people, is doing. And that has a very, very heavy price pertaining to it. Every single day you're doing shit, you're throwing your life away. Seriously, you're throwing your life away. I look back now and I go, well, look, I did a lot of things. I owned a lot of things. And when I started to wake up, I let go of absolutely everything in this ranch I owned in Bulgaria. I sold the whole thing with every single stick of furniture and ornament that are collected from all over the world. I had a 40-foot shipping container full of all prestigious, beautiful stuff, very expensive, the best of the best I had, and all these things are collected from all my travels all over the world. And I just let it all go. And the people that bought my house were really happy that I was going to leave everything. Because even though they never collected all these ornaments and things, they had no memories of where those things came from. It was like being in a museum. They respected certain antiquities and pieces of art because it filled them full of intrigue, because they hadn't done a lot of travelling. These people were Bulgarian, never had a lot of money. But the guy, he worked in the merchant navy, and so he was away 6 months at a time, so he'd managed to get big money compared to Bulgarians, so he could buy my house, my ranch. So I walked away, and I said to myself, well, I don't need any of that stuff anymore. It's all just a pain. I have to dust it, I have to polish it, I have to clean it, I have to upkeep it, I have to store it, I have to haul it, I have to pay for it. No, I've got it all here. It's all memories. And depending on how good my memory is, well, I'll keep lots of it for a long time. And the bits that slip away from my memory, I won't remember, will I? So it'll be no loss to me. Finally, people, what I will say, when people are on their deathbed, when they're very, very old, and they go senile, then they forget everything, don't they? For instance, the grandmother of my daughter. The grandmother now is 86 years old, and she's completely lost it. She's in the home now. 3 months ago, she didn't want to go in the home. and she was putting up a right fuss. But anyway, she had to go in the home. Within a week of her being in the home, she thought that home was her own home. And she says to her daughter, my daughter's mother, and my daughter, "Oh, look at my lovely flowers. I've done well this year, haven't I?" They're not her flowers. She thinks she's planting them flowers. And then she says, "Do you like my home? Would you like to live in this home?" And like, you know, her daughter and granddaughter look at each other going, well, great, she's finally thinking this is her own home, so she won't be putting up any fuss anymore. So the mind has this beautiful way of making it so easy for us to die, because the mind, in its old age, in its brilliance, in its genius, enables us to do what we find it very, very difficult to do when we are fully compos mentis. But you see, what actually is happening with these old people, they've let everything go. They've got no attachment, and they're completely living in the now from one moment to the next because they can't remember anything. And they will eat their dinner, and then 20 minutes later they'll be going, "I'm hungry, when's dinner coming?" And it's kind of like you know. And so isn't that a wonderful predicament to be in? Because you've got no idea that you are on your deathbed. You've got no let's say bitter thoughts about all of the missed opportunities in your life. All the things that you wish you'd have done instead of just wasting your life away, if that's what you did. No, your brain just closes all that down, goes, don't worry about all that shit. You're in the now, darling. Yeah, you're in the now, and you're just going to drift off into Never Never Land. And so, what I'm saying is then, if we look forward, see what I do often, I consider that I am a time traveller, and I'm coming from myself in the future, 30 years, and I'm coming back, and I'm going, hey, Aaron, by the way, make sure you're present, make sure you're living now, right? Make sure you're absorbing and enjoying everything, because by the time you get to where I am now, you don't want to be filled with regrets and bitterness, mate. You don't want to be thinking, oh, I wish I'd done this and I wish I'd done that. Do it all now. Be present, mate. Just go and take life by the horns and do it. All right, mate? See you later. I'm going back to the future. Whew. Enough said, yeah?